Good evening. It's 6 p.m. I know that because my computer has a clock. And I waited. I sat here patiently waiting for 6 p.m. April 26, 2021 to arrive. I have tremendous patience. Uh-huh. Ooh. Oh. Ooh. Excuse me, I have something in my eye. Okay. So I was bragging about my tremendous patience to sit at my desk and wait for 6 p.m. And now it's 6:01 p.m. That's how patient I am. Not only was I waiting for 6, I'm still here and it's 6:01. I'm remarkable. You know, you got to pat yourself on the back sometimes because if you don't, who will, right? Okay. So, welcome to Law and Disorder with your host, Ken Goldberg, who coincidentally is me. All right. So, I was starting to say it's April 26, 2021, in the year of our Lord. And Law and Disorder, it doesn't get any more disorderly than this podcast, I promise you. Hi, Becky and Chris and Kathy and Lisa. It's nice to see you all. It's been a while. You know, I was tied up on a mountain somewhere, way 967 miles away. But all good things come to an end. I had to come back, and have I got stories for you? Oh my gosh. No, I don't. What I have is the insanity of 30 hours alone in your own vehicle, occasionally playing music, but the voices in the head, unrelenting voices in the head. We'll talk a little bit about those voices. Chris and Becky, I assume Becky's still with them and hasn't left them, are in South Bend, Indiana, tending to his mom. The rest of you are where you usually are. Ray Dean, hi. Kathy, Rose. You know, I saw Ray Dean in Arizona. What a delight. I wish I could visit everybody everywhere, but I really needed to go to Tucson. I really needed to be there for a variety of reasons I didn't even know about. I ain't lying. Oh, I'm going to tell you, I got a couple of stories. I have a lot of stories. You do still love him. That's so sweet, Becky, considering who he is. Oh, so you're back in Dallas. Well, welcome, Becky. And for those of you who may eventually watch this on YouTube, nobody ever does, but eventually somebody will. I'll be discovered. So I want to say something to you people on YouTube. I'm talking to people on Facebook. So don't get dismayed if you're not following along and wondering, what am I missing? You're not missing anything. It's a simulcast. I'm simultaneously casting on Facebook. But you could always watch it on Facebook. But you've got YouTube. And I think the quality may not be good because I forgot to set it up different because I've been away for 2 weeks in Tucson, Arizona. Oh, have I got stories for you? No, I don't. Okay. So listen, here's the thing. I don't recommend driving cross country by yourself because I'm going to tell you what, when this all started, and this being my trip, okay, first off, I want to tell you, it's very difficult to get out. Okay, why is it difficult to get out of town? In case you didn't know, I'm the proud owner, caretaker, I don't know what I am, of 3 cats. Okay, all for 17 years, I think there's always been somebody in the house when I'm gone to take care of the cats. So I never really worried. Well, I guess in Tucson once we left some people in our house to take care of the cats. That was a slight fiasco, but not a major fiasco. This time I got nobody. My daughters are in Korea. They've been since the divorce. My daughters have always been here when I go away. They were here. They take care of the cats. They dirty the house for me. And then they check on me the day I'm coming home. My daughters will call me, maybe at least 2 times and go, "Oh, so where are you now? What time will you be home?" Because they're trying to get the house clean before I get here, because I go off my rocker when I come into a dirty house. Well, so anyways, back to the story. So there's always been some errors. So just the logistics of getting out of town was complicated. And finally, my friend Jackie agreed to stay and pet the cats. And so off I went. I packed the van. I took a bicycle. I took the kitchen sink. I took all the clothes one could ever want when you don't know what the weather's going to be like. Ta-da! And I drove. I drove to El Paso. That's about 600 and something miles, 635 miles, maybe a little bit more, 660 miles. I crashed for the night there, and then I got up and I finished the trip to Tucson. And then the return trip, almost in reverse. So I get in my vehicle one day. It was a Friday, I believe, and I drove to El Paso, crashed for the night. Then I drove here. So here's part of what I want to communicate ever so poorly, because I've been trying to communicate in a blog and absolutely I made it. Okay, you're following me. Okay, so here I am trying to orally share, because the writing didn't just. So here I am, 6:07 p.m. on a Monday night, trying to gather my thoughts. Listen, here's the challenge. Somehow, I'm not sure how this works, because I'm not a scientist. And if I was a scientist, I still wouldn't know how this works. I have a brain that is like so many other people have said, is out to get me. And it wasn't too bad going. Okay. Going to Tucson, there was a certain amount of enthusiasm mixed with apprehension. I've only been there one other time since Gary's memorial. It was just, but I had some enthusiasm. Maybe the enthusiasm was multiplied by the fact that I've been away so long. There's been the pandemic. I'm seeing people I haven't seen, and yada, yada, yada. I think yada, yada, yada comes from George, what is it? Steinfeld. Yeah. Anyways, so going there wasn't so bad. Things happened in Tucson that stimulated the something cortex of the brain that is really unable to process things with one to bring about completion. My mind is incapable of processing distress successfully. There's so many things that my mind is bad at. Now, I'm good at a lot of this stuff. It's my brain that hurts. Okay. So I'm driving back. Something happened in Tucson that triggered stuff that had nothing in the main, didn't have a lot to do with Tucson. I mean, Tucson was just where I was when things happened. Conversations that took place, which again, the conversation could have taken place in various places. Didn't have to take place in Tucson, but it did. So here's the problem when you drive alone a lot. For whatever reason, when you're in a situation that triggers a variety of emotions, it triggers trauma, whatever it is that it may have stimulated. And then most of us, under normal circumstances, We are in a community. I mean, even here, right? We've talked about this whole project, this whole law and disorder project is a result of a desire for community and connection. When you're in a van in West Texas, you may not even have phone service, right? So who you going to talk to? Yourself. Here lies peril. For those of you that are as disturbed in the head as I am, and most of you are, you would struggle, as I did, with only yourself to communicate with. And I have been on retreats, silent retreats, meditated for hours on end. I lived in a monastery twice. I know how to exercise solitude. But the companion to solitude is often loneliness. And solitude can be a very rewarding sensation. It can empower you. It can be a positive stimulant. Loneliness tends to be a depressant. It tends to deprive you of the joy of solitude. It tends to distract you from the moment. Loneliness tends to drag you into the future, beat you with a baseball bat, leave you with your nose bleeding, your lips cracked, your teeth, one or two of your teeth missing, whatever. I'm just winging it here, okay? So it's a great dialogue of existence, our existence as humans, that we all will at some point or another, we will have to look at ourselves, unto ourselves, and we will have to, well, maybe you won't, maybe it's just me, have to grapple with loneliness and seek to embrace solitude. Humans need some solitude. Constant stimulation usually results in chaos. And chaos is not a state of mind that's ever been identified. When psychologists talk about states of mind, mental health, they don't go, the chaotic mind is a healthy mind. They don't say that. And there's a good reason. And my personal experience would dictate, yeah, chaos isn't good. Solitude is often the ability to stay in the moment, to be present in the now, and to be able to reflect within that context what is happening to this entity, which in my case I call Ken Goldberg, if you want to get more specific, if you know other Kens. Then, when left alone for too long, and let me go back to this thing about a retreat. Even in a retreat, there is solitude. There is not as much, how do you say it? The loneliness is not as pervasive, because when you're on a retreat, typically you see other people constantly, and there's some, again, a sense of community. You're all trying this out. You're all trying to meditate. You're all trying to find your ability to stay in the moment. There's quite a bit of community in retreat. In my van, I'm going to be honest with you, ain't no freaking sense of community. It's like, Ken, you got a CD? Ken, how about your iPod? Ken, where did you put your glasses? It's all about me communicating with me and only me. Occasionally, I may make a phone call, but West Texas, for those of you that have driven through West Texas, there are mountains in some parts of West Texas. They're just vast parts of land where there are no poles. Thus, in the absence of poles, you have no antennas or whatever they call those things they mount, satellites that help you communicate with your cell phone. Nor should there be necessarily. Being alone in a vehicle can be really rewarding unless you've been triggered while sitting in Tucson, and then you get in the car to drive 968 miles. There is the dig. It's not driving. It's not necessarily being alone. It's not being in Tucson going to Dallas or Dallas going to Tucson. It's not, do I have enough money? It's not, is somebody watching the house? It's simply the element of a community reduced to one. I have given a lot of thought over the years to this community, this concept in my head of community of one, because I've often thought when I'm doing my reflecting on loving kindness, um, I used to do it a little different. I changed it up from time to time simply so I don't go crazy, repeating myself for 9 years, 3 times a week. That's, I don't know how many meditations it has, but anyways, I think about people who are isolated. There are people right now, not you. I'm not talking about pandemic isolation. I'm talking about people who suffer from some sort of mental, spiritual, or physical disability that prevents them from being able to engage with others. Maybe they just simply can't get out, or maybe their mental health has deteriorated to the point where they're not able to communicate in a healthy fashion. Whatever it is, you all know there are people who are isolated. They're in their own form of lockdown that is perpetual, that they rarely can break from. Sometimes a family member looks in and says, you need to get out. You become a pack rat. You're hoarding, or look at all these cigarette butts. Whatever it is, you see signs of this disability, perhaps, and you try. But there are others for whom there is no more family. There are no more friends. The isolation has gone on long enough that the persons that they may have relied upon, a parent or whatever, is they're just not there anymore, right? They've outlived them or they've moved away from them. I had a cousin, his name was Sandy. Sandy, I didn't know Sandy until I was in my late 40s. He was a cousin. And my aunt who lived she lived in Indiana, and I can't think of where in Indiana all of a sudden. Fort Wayne, Indiana. I had an aunt and uncle that lived in Fort Wayne. The aunt was a blood relative and her husband. Her husband passed away at some point, and I had only seen them a few times through the years. They sent me to visit them a couple of times in Fort Wayne, and then she came to visit us a couple of times, and then she moved to Brownsville, Texas, or no, Harlingen, Texas. Same thing, right? Way far away. So she communicated with me at some point. Hi, Jenny. My aunt communicated and said, would you please look for your cousin, Sandy Miller? And I didn't even know of his existence. I had never met him. I put a skip tracer on it and I found him. He was in his 50s and he was living in a nursing home because he had a mental disability. He really couldn't navigate life on his own. He's one of these people I'm talking about who could be in an apartment somewhere and just be so alone because his mental frame of mind, his mental illness or disability is such that he's no longer engaging with the public. Well, he was in a nursing home. And by the way, I really, up until that moment, hadn't paid a lot of attention to nursing homes or people who were younger than the nursing home age, which I thought was senior citizens. But no, there's a lot of mentally disabled people that live in these halfway houses and nursing homes. So I tracked them down, had to go through a couple of places. I found him. Sandy was a really nice guy, but he was crazy. He was, I don't know what his mental illness was, autism, like he knew classical music really well. He had CDs not CDs, he had cassettes, and he loved his classical music. But other than that, his eye contact was, negligible. His speech was very difficult to follow sometimes, kind of a stutter, but not stuttering. And so I engaged with him. He was happy to meet me. Um, I moved him at some point. I moved him to a home that I had some input. I'm a lawyer, so of course, what happens is when a lawyer places you in a home and is a relative or close friend, I want to tell you the home tends to pay more attention because things happen in nursing homes you don't want to happen to somebody you care about. So I would make sure that, the file would say, caregiver or whatever it was, so that if anything happened to him, if he fell, if his nose bled, I would have to be called, right? And the fact that I'm a lawyer is it has an effect on nursing homes. I know this because I've been involved with other patients that I took care of in nursing homes. Anyways, up until I met Sandy, I didn't really think about a 50 something year old person who was physically capable, but was mentally incapable being in a nursing home. Hi, Sean. Welcome. So, Sandy was my first whatever you call it, nursing home relative, and I would go to visit him, but it was difficult. There was no joy in his life. For those of you that have had somebody who's in a nursing home, or Chris and his mom or whatever, there's so much negativity that these people can generate because they don't know how to socially behave in a way that makes you feel good about interacting with them, right? And that was Sandy. He was grateful for my companionship, but he would wear me out very quickly when I would visit him or when I would call him. I would. It was easier for me to call the nursing uh, place and ask about him and inquire about his well-being. And if he fell or something and he had to go to the hospital, then they would call me. I would, you know, ask the questions: what happened, how did it happen, how are we going to prevent it from happening again? I wouldn't have deigned to call him in a nursing home and navigate that. So I often think about the fact that there are people who for whatever reason have become isolated. It's not solitude. It's either un, in not aware, or it's lonely because they're locked up inside their heads or their bodies. People who cannot physically get around and don't have relatives or friends nearby. So they can't physically. So they are confined. Okay. So what I'm trying to talk about is I'm aware of the confinement of mental illness or physical illness and emotional difficulties that all of us suffer. And as I'm driving back from Tucson and I have all this time alone, I recognize that no matter where I am, my difficulties are always just one thought away. I have tools. When that happens, I remind myself to stay in the moment. But when I'm just completely alone in the car uh, all day, all day, it's very hard sometimes once triggered to stay in the now. I start dragging the past in replacing the moment, this moment. I drag the past in. I start projecting into the future. My ability to stay in the moment. You would think if you're just driving a car, you could focus on driving. You could say, driving, driving. That's, Thich Nhat Hanh, the great mindfulness instructors, teachers tell you just be present if you're driving, if you're washing your hands, washing if you're eating. Easier said than done. And I don't always do it well. Uh, Flashback. I went to Tucson and it started out pretty good, by the way. Um, I went for the first couple of days and I was with my friend Elaine, and Elaine and we are great friends. She's possibly my closest female friend. Um, we've known each other, I don't know, but carry the one, about 11 years. And so we visited. We did some biking. We did a movie. I hadn't met my first movie in a year, over a year, right? So that was fine. And then she left and went to California to visit grandkids. That was the plan. And my friends took over her house. She has a 3-bedroom place. And Carrie flew in from San Francisco area. And Marv, who lives in Tucson, moved in. He left his wife at their house. The three of us resided there, got up each day, went out, we hiked, we came back. We have over 100 years of fellowship between the three of us. In other words, I met Carrie when I was 13. I was a freshman in high school. I met Marv when I was 13, and I was a sophomore in high school. So a lot of history, a lot of old friend stuff. Cool. I reached out to this young lady named Rachel. Rachel is the daughter of one of the dearest people I ever met. Well, dear to me, right? I don't know that anybody else would have found him dear. I have no clue. He came into a 12-step recovery about 6 months after me. We became dear friends. We hiked hundreds of miles, I'm sure, and for about 6 years. And then those of you that know, he got cancer. He died. Here's where the story begins. The story begins with his passing. Am I going too fast for you? I feel like I'm in a manic phase here. I'm looking at the screen. I'm watching the animation in my face, and I'm like, you people may think I'm out of my freaking mind if you're just looking at me and the animation. Anyways, I can't stop the story to wait to see if you think I'm manic. So Jerry died. It'll be 6 years in November. He died at the age of 54, a week before his birthday. I was with him just before he passed. I went and I was taking him to radiation, and it was. I knew he was going soon. I had gone there specifically because though I had visited him with regularly, I was waiting to go for his birthday around Thanksgiving, and I recognized on the phone that he wasn't going to make it to Thanksgiving, not likely. So I jumped in the van, I went, and I was with him, and then through a series of circumstances that I had no control over, the access to him was suddenly denied, and he passed without me, and he had a memorial without me, but I was given ashes, and I took his ashes to a hike, and it was one of the most traumatic moments in my adult life. It was beyond painful, right? And so he had 4 children. He has 4 children, not had. He has 4 children. Or he had, I don't know. Does anybody know proper English? So he has 3 daughters and a son. And I knew 3 of the kids, and I didn't know one other. That's Velvet. That's one of my kids. So I've never spoken to one of his kids since before he passed. No contact. I would post on Facebook, and in the early days of his passing, there would be some sort of acknowledgement that I posted something, shout out to Jerry, and then it stopped. It faded. So why am I telling you this story? So I had gotten a phone call from his middle daughter a few months back, and then she got COVID. We had talked about something specific. When I got there, I texted her. I didn't text her in advance. I pondered the possibility. I didn't know that I wanted to be rejected. I didn't know if I wanted to reach out to this young woman. She's probably just not quite 30, I think. I didn't want to have her say no. I don't want to have dinner with you or lunch with you. But I the compulsion to reach out, I succumbed to it, and she was like, "That'd be great." And then she said, "And I'm going to invite my sister, my older sister, who I had only met once for 5 minutes. That made me nervous. Like, oh, it's bad enough. The one I know will reject. The one that I don't know will reject. So we met for dinner, and they brought the two grandkids. One whom I knew because he was born before Jerry passed. The other one's been born since. The four of us, you saw the photograph, but I was cryptic. I didn't know how to explain the photograph. So I had dinner with them. And by the way, his grandson, who was just like a bundle of energy when he was 2 years old or something, and I thought, oh man, this kid wears you out quickly. Sat for almost 3 hours very patiently during the dinner, as did his 2-year-old sister. He's now, I don't know, 8, 9, or he's in third grade, whatever that is, right? So the four of them and me, we had dinner, and I'm getting to this will segue into why the trip back from Tucson sometimes was such a mixed bag, right? So his oldest daughter, whom I never met, couldn't have been nicer, could not have been lovelier. There was a shift in the family relations within that family since he passed and I moved away. I mean, I had already moved away, but since I moved away from them, that's a complicated thing that I don't have to go into for you to follow me. What happened was, so you know, why did I assume they would reject me? Because it had gone 5 years without any communication on their part, Joan. The only reason I finally heard from the one that I heard from was a legal issue. And she knew that I should be contacted. She asked her sister, and her sister said, yeah, of course you should. So the assumption is they don't really have a relationship with me. And it's one thing to call me on the phone, Joan, and say, hey, can you help me with this legal issue? It's another thing to say, I'm happy to meet you for dinner and talk about dad and everything else that's associated with it. So the dinner went well, much better. But here's the thing I want to share that. So I'm really elated. I'm talking to them. I'm just so, I'm so happy that there seems to be this genuine give and take, right? And I tell them, I'm really glad that you did this, and this is important because, as would be with Radine and Kathy, Gary's wife and Gary's sister and Gary's sons, and for those of you who have, I said in the Facebook post, when you've lost somebody dear to you, their family becomes an integral part of something. I don't even have time or words to explain it, but I think Radine and Kathy would know, for instance, that because of my enduring relationship with Gary, they could unhesitatingly call me for something. Of course, they're adults. They know me well enough. These were younger people. I don't know if they knew. Well, they didn't know, for instance, because Rachel asked her sister, do you think I could call him? And the sister, who didn't know me, said, of course you can. Anyways, so at the end of dinner, as we're doing the whole goodbye thing, Rachel said something that was so extraordinarily touching, that if there's this thing that reaches down into your soul, and massages it and says, hey, then this was it. If I were to get married, I'd expect you would walk me down the aisle. Now, I'm not a girl, and I'm not a sentimental guy, but that penetrated, right? And that was the thing. So in that moment, all the anxiety, all the rejection that I had felt for the 5 years, so much of this, whatever it is, whatever this is, this grief process, right, was in some measure healed. And that was like, I left there. I'm like, I'm on cloud nine, babe. I mean, these two adult women have said to me, we understand the relationship you have with our dad. We are grateful that you're available to be a part of our life, and yada yada yada. Okay, so that's one of the incidents in Tucson, and then I got to see Ray Dean and Linda. Linda, I've known since I was 15. Ray Dean, we've known each other about 38 years, 40 years. I don't know what it is now. I got to have a meal with the two of them. That was, wow, that was, what do you call it? When the good thing, feeds the soul also. And then, of course, I saw my oldest friend in the world, Carrie, and my second oldest friend in the world, Marv. And, we did this thing. We had this week of hiking and talking and sharing and caring. And then, you sure I'm not out of my freaking mind here? Am I? You sure? Because, I mean, man, I realize 6:45 is almost coming, and I don't even know. I don't even know if I'm halfway through my story, or if I'm 3/4 or I'm 1/4, because I didn't really think about it. I just decided to do what I always do. It's just sit down and ramble, right? But when I thought about, should I do something? I've been away for 2 weeks. Should I prep some kind of, and I thought, all that's asked of you in your podcast is to be real, be honest. And I thought, so just do what you do. You sit down and get real. All right. So back to, so other things. So that was good. And then I stayed at Marv's house for 2 days, because some events took place while I was staying in Elaine's that I had no control over. She had no control over. But her daughters were coming quickly because one of their friends passed there. And so they were coming from out of town. And who gets the bedroom? The kids, or Ken? The kids. So I'm gone. And I could go to a hotel, or I could go to this residence of a friend that I was apprehensive about going to for a variety of reasons. Mostly Ray Dean's the only one that knows what the reason is. And you don't need to know what the reason is, but I did it. I spent 2 nights there, and that healed another thing that was pervasive and long-term. Okay. Then I got an opportunity to hike with my monk friend, and Ajahn Sarayut, who he's the abbot of the temple where I started practicing Buddhism 12 years ago. And thank you, Chris. So we went and we hiked with Linda. That was bonus points. The 3 of us hiked. You saw the pictures. When we got done hiking, sawadee, goodbye. And he said, well, what are you doing this afternoon? I'm like, are you serious? I'm doing nothing. That's what I do. My other friend had gone back to California. And then he said, well, why don't we get ice cream today around 2? Sure, why not, right? So we had a great, we had a good discussion about Buddhism. It's like this, arm wrestle about Buddhism. He knows more than I do, so we didn't wrestle with what is Buddhism. We arm wrestle about what is Buddhism to a Westerner versus what is Buddhism to an Easterner, an Asian. The conversation, it was time to move on. I had to go. He had to go. I don't remember. And he said, I want to stop this and I want to talk about something else. And then he acknowledged an event that took place 12 years ago that I was an integral part of. And he said, I just want to thank you. Healing number 3. Again, I don't know who, maybe Ray Dean's the only one that knows about this percolating resentment about something that we did many years ago, and that I always kind of felt like there was short shrift around it. But anyways, so there's all this healing taking place. But I will tell you that that wasn't all that was happening. There were conversations about life. There were conversations about quality of life. There were conversations about loss, about grief, about community, about connection. And my role in my life facilitating relationships. Well, I've told you all here previously that there is a relationship that was disrupted, that was significant, that left a hole where once there was a heart or whatever, okay? And don't you know, that's what I freaking focused on for 15 hours, or a good part of the 15 hours coming back. I'm sitting there focused on this lost relationship and the chaos of going over this thing that I was always powerless over today, and always will be powerless. But that triggered the kinds of disturbance. The synapses could sometimes go wild with, and where it goes wild is when you go, oh my God, enough already. Let's think of something else. You've all done this. Everybody in the world has had thoughts that they knew inherently were not necessarily productive, right? I mean, it's productive to sit and organize and plan, as long as you don't invest in the outcome, or to stroll down memory lane, as I often talk about how often Gary and I did that. But here was a situation that was disturbing in its time and only left a disturbing wake. You know how a boat leaves a wake initially when the wake eventually subsides? I mean, the wave, but they call it a wake, eventually goes on and on and on, and it becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. But sometimes, it feels like the turbulence, this wake, is unrelenting. And it continues every time you kind of come up from it. You get more water in your nose and your mouth. You feel like you can't breathe properly, because every time you try to breathe, you'll end up taking in a mouthful of water. I know this because I've told you when I was a sophomore in high school and somebody tried to drown me. They did a pretty good job for the time they had. I always remembered that when I was underwater, I wanted to make it to the surface and scream for help. I was in the swimming pool of high school. And what I discovered, because I'd never been in that situation, is when you get to the surface, you have to have air to yell. And I didn't have air. The air had already been exhaled underwater, it was beaten out of it. So when I would get to the surface, all I could do is gasp for air, and then I would go be pushed down again. Sometimes our thoughts are very much like that. Our thoughts, our emotions they're just like taking in water, and you know that you are in peril, emotionally, physically, intellectually, spiritually, whatever it is. You recognize the peril. But when you come up for air and you want to do something about it, you just get another mouthful of water. Yeah, Mark's got it. Oh, help me, please, doctor, I'm damaged. There's a pain where there once was a heart. Thank you. It's sleeping, it's beaten. Can you please tear it out and preserve it right there in that jar? And I posted, or no, I didn't post. I don't think. So I'm writing the blog, Mark. Jimmy Ruffin. I'm writing this blog about this very emotional subject, personal to me. And I realize I'm really kind of writing Jimmy Ruffin's, well, he didn't write the song, he sang it. What becomes of the brokenhearted? And I don't know if I posted Facebook or if I only posted it into my blog that's sitting in a draft file because I couldn't get past whatever it was I was trying to communicate. I couldn't find words. I could find emotions, but and then in the midst of it, as Mark heard me say, there's a pain where there once was a heart. The same kind of thing with the song, What Becomes a Broken Heart. A line just fell into my head. I looked at the lyrics and said, well, shit. I mean, he said a lot of it already. So I don't know. It's 6:46. I will try, maybe, as Chris suggested, try to address some of the fallout again tomorrow, because there is an unending turbulence that is associated with it. If I hadn't been practicing meditation for the last 12 years, if I hadn't been in recovery, if I had been doing drugs, I mean, if it and buts was candy and nuts every day be Christmas, no. If I hadn't done and found some of these tools, listen, 5 years ago, in the midst of a divorce, I drove to Tucson. And I don't think I've ever been any more crazy than that. I was so angry and so hurt about this divorce that when I was getting close to Tucson, I called the drug dealer, my meth dealer, whom I hadn't seen. I had been clean for years. And she still had the same phone number. But two things. Gary was still alive, and he told me to come get something that would calm my nerves that he had. I didn't have to take anything. The monk told me I could come to the temple, and my AA sponsor called me on the phone and refused to get off the phone until I made it to the Buddhist temple, which was really not my destination. So I've been in a vehicle for 15 hours alone with Ken, and I know that that's not always good. But then, things have calmed down, and so I figured I'm good. Maybe I'll be able to articulate the trigger or triggers that took place in Tucson, but I don't know, because I don't know that I can put it in context. There are people, places, and things that are best left undisturbed. Anyways, that's the end of my podcast, which I referred to as Law and Disorder with your host, Ken Goldberg. But I don't sign off without doing some metta. And I also want to give a shout out to Meta, because I posted something on my Facebook group for the meditation, and Ajahn Jeff, an American monk, wrote this thing and said, when we do metta, it's not that we are filled with this warmth and this kindness. We don't have necessarily that feeling, but the act of practicing metta, the act of sending out compassion, kindness, goodwill, it is a reshaping of the thought, the attitude, and the mind, which over a period of time will bring us some relief from things like hostility, anger, impatience, greed. Thank you, Ray Dean. So, for those of you that know what I'm doing now, I'm doing metta, and I probably will have to take this up tomorrow, Chris, because there's so much to this, and I think that when you share the stuff that I'm talking about, It's the stuff that is hard to talk about. I don't want to talk about it. I want I don't want to talk about it. One, because I don't like talking about it. Two, I don't like talking about it because I don't have a resolution. I'd like to sit here and tell you that, oh, guess what? I was in Tucson and boop, boop. And then I sat down and I talked it out and I got a tremendous sense of relief and I'm feeling much better. That is not the situation at all. But Roger Ebert, some of you may or may not know, was in 12-step recovery. He was a recovering alcoholic. He's dead. I'm blowing his anonymity. And he used to lead a meeting in Chicago of AA at a place called the Mustard Seed. And I would be at his meeting. It was on Tuesday nights, I think, at 8 p.m. And he always said, you're only as sick as your secrets. So I believed him. I thought there was truth in that. I've always thought there's truth in that. And I've tried to have no secrets. That's hard. That's hard. But so anyways, I'm going to try to purge this percolating mystery of my own mind for my own benefit so that you can be the best friend you can be to me, just as I'm always trying to be available to be the best friend to you that I can be. And that takes place on a field of grain, and that grain represents truth and honesty. And therein we can harvest and see each other clearly, not as the giant of our dreams nor the dwarf of our fears, but see each other as we are in this moment. All right. Sorry. I really went over. I really don't like doing that. I put my hands together before my heart. I encourage you to do so. I bow my head. I close my eyes. I take a deep breath. And I think to myself, may I be happy, healthy, free from harm, free from anger, anxiety, and fear. May this practice guide me to a place of greater comfort and peace. May my friends and my family, all whom are dear to me, be happy, be healthy, and free from all harm. May they too find their path that leads into a life of peace and comfort. May those persons I harbor ill will towards, that I find difficult, that I resent, those persons too deserve my goodwill. And I send it to them. May they be happy, healthy, free from harm. May they also be living their lives in comfort, peace, and joy. And to all living beings, wherever they may be, throughout the entire universe, all sentient beings, all these beings that I saw from the highway, looking out over farms of what I thought were too many cows, horses in the sun. And I saw javelina on the highway, and I saw animals at the mercy of cars, and my heart ached at times, So for all sentient beings, I wish them to be happy, healthy, free from harm. May all sentient beings be safe, comfortable, and at peace. Satu, Satu, Satu. So listen, I know I went off, but you know me well enough to know that I went off to the best of my ability, with good intentions. How's that? With good intentions. Thank you, Chris and Becky and Kathy and Mark and Ann, Lisa and Joan and Radine. Thank you. It was so good to see you, Radine. And Kathy, did I say Joan? I think so. And Lisa, you're just a wonder. And I don't know if Ginny stuck around or Sean or Rachel. If you did, bless you. I'm glad you did. Rose. And I'm not going to explain the music. Yes, I am. It's important. Female performers, not particularly well known. At least I didn't know. Anyways, enjoy the music. Peace out.